There is something inside you that has been building up for years. It's not exactly sadness, nor anger, nor fear. It's something deeper. A heavy, almost mineral silence. A type of pain that doesn't scream, but sucks the color out of things. You get out of bed, follow your routine, keep commitments, smile in the photos. But deep down you feel like you're slowly fading away. And the worst? You call it normality. From a young age, they taught you to be strong, not to complain, to be understanding. They said that good people are those who put up with everything, who give in, who do their best to maintain harmony. You believed. And every time something hurt you and you kept quiet, you thought you were doing the right thing. Every time you swallowed your pain to avoid appearing dramatic, you thought you were maturing. But in truth, he was beginning to forget himself. There is a difference between maturity and mutilation. And you, without realizing it, chose to mutilate yourself emotionally to fit into other people's worlds. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist, realized this long before it became fashionable to talk about mental health. He saw something in common in his patients. The deepest pain did not come from great tragedies, but from the accumulation of small concessions. It's not the scream that destroys you. It's the whisper you ignore for too long. Stop and think. How many times have you doubted your own intuition because someone told you you were exaggerating? How many times have you laughed at a joke that hurt you just to not seem boring? How many times have you accepted unsolicited advice that made you feel smaller? This is no coincidence. It's standard. And patterns, when not broken, become prisons. Imagine a small example from everyday life. A woman in her 40s, a public school teacher, hears every day from her husband that she doesn't try hard enough to improve her life. She tries to ignore it, try to be patient, but every comment like that is like a drop of acid in the mirror of self-esteem. One day, she just stops looking at herself. And when you stop looking at yourself, you start living through the eyes of others. Jung called this alienation of the soul, a process where you cease to exist in the name of maintaining a bond, stability, acceptance. The price? Your identity, your vitality, its essence. You might even think, but that's not manipulation, that's just life. No, it's not just life. It is a subtle, silent type of violence that disguises itself as care. And the first behavior that opens the door to this destructive process is emotional manipulation. It doesn't arrive clearly. Don't raise your voice. She comes up with phrases like, "I'm only saying this for your good," or, "If you really loved me, you would do this." It settles between the lines, in favors charged with guilt, in decisions made by you, but that don't seem like yours. And then the doubt begins, first about the situation, then about your perception, and finally, about yourself. A real historical example. At the court of Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette was surrounded by advisors who said they were concerned about the good of the kingdom. Little by little, they manipulated her into making unpopular decisions that helped precipitate the French Revolution. The manipulations were not violent. They were elegant, political, even affectionate, and they destroyed not only her image, but also what she believed to be her role as queen. The same happens to you on another scale. Emotional manipulation does not destroy you all at once. It undermines day after day. And why do you allow this? Because he was taught to believe that the other always comes first, that to love is to give in, that the good is whoever can handle it. But Jung warned, true love begins with self-respect. If you don't respect yourself, no one will do it for you. And that is precisely where your awakening begins. The moment something in you starts saying, "This isn't right," that inner whisper is your essence trying to come back to the surface. But you might not hear that whisper soon, because it competes with external noise, demands, other people's opinions, the fear of losing someone. Still, it is there, like a spark, like the beginning of a flame that refuses to go out. And you know what else allows this cycle to continue? The laughter. Yes, laughter. Because the next behavior that Jung would help us identify as destructive is humiliation disguised as humor. Have you ever been the target of a joke in public that made you uncomfortable, but you forced yourself to laugh so as not to appear weak? This is not lightness. That's a stab with a handle covered in flowers. Think about a work environment. A sales manager makes a funny comment about an employee's outfit. Everyone laughs. She smiles too, on the outside. Inside, something breaks, and she spends the rest of the day feeling inadequate. small. That's the power of camouflaged mockery. It's not just a joke. It's an attempt to reduce you while everyone watches and consents. Jung stated that the unconscious does not differentiate between what is a joke and what is real. What is repeated becomes true in your body, and you start to believe that you deserve to be the target because it's just a joke, right? Wrong. It's not just. It's never alone. And when you accept this repeatedly, you instill in yourself the idea that feeling pain in the face of devaluation is exaggerated, that the problem is you. But it's not. You are faced with behaviors that feed on each other. Manipulation, doubt, mockery, silence. Each reinforces the other. And the more you accept it, the harder it is to remember who you were before this all started. But there's still time. Because the simple fact of hearing these words, of feeling that they touch you somewhere deep, is a sign that something in you still resists. You didn't get here by chance. You are here because something inside you wants to break out of this cycle. Because even though the world tells you to suck it up and smile, your soul has started to scream. A silent scream, but one that you can no longer ignore. And that's exactly why you need to keep going. Because now that you've seen the first behavior, emotional manipulation, and felt how it manifests itself with subtlety and venom, it's time to understand the next one. Because the cycle doesn't stop there. It goes deeper. It expands. Have you ever noticed how certain words enter us smiling and leaving deep cuts? How do some funny phrases weigh like stones on your chest even though everyone around you laughs? This is the second behavior that Carl Jung would warn us not to tolerate. Humiliation disguised as humor. She doesn't arrive aggressively. She doesn't point fingers. She doesn't shout. She approaches with a smile, with a joking tone, with a collective laugh. And that is precisely what makes it so destructive. You may have already experienced something like this. In a circle of friends, someone makes a joke about the way you speak, your appearance, your way of expressing yourself. Laughter explodes. You smile too, out of reflex, out of defense, out of fear. But inside, something contracts. Part of you feels shame. Part of you feels anger. But most of you feel confusion. Am I overreacting? Am I the problem? The answer, with all the clarity in the world, is no. This form of symbolic violence is a silent weapon. Jung said that everything that is repeated with intensity enters the unconscious as truth. If you are told, even in jest, that you are inadequate, inferior, or laughed at, sooner or later you begin to see yourself that way. The laughter that was external becomes an internal echo. And this echo shapes the way you see yourself, how you position yourself in the world, how you allow yourself to be treated. The cruelest thing is that these attacks almost never come from declared enemies. They come from those who say they love you, who calls himself your friend, who should be a safe haven. And this creates a dissonance within you. Because how can someone who says they care hurt you like that? This doesn't make sense. So you choose the most common path. Doubt yourself. Because it's easier to believe that you are sensitive than to accept that that person is being cruel. An everyday example can illustrate this brutally. Imagine a 29-year-old boy, a bar musician, with bigger dreams than reality allows at the moment. He opens up to his girlfriend about his insecurities, his fears of not working out. She listens, caresses, and says, "Ah, you and your rock star dream. So cute." With a smile, she empties what was most vulnerable there. It seems small, but this joke is repeated. Over time, he stops sharing. He swallows. He closes down. And she will never understand why he stopped being the same. In history, we have a cruel example of this. In ancient Rome, Emperor Claudius was constantly ridiculed for his stutter. Even though he occupied the highest position, he was the target of derision by his own senators. These public humiliations dehumanized the man behind the title. And this happens to you on a smaller scale. Every day you remain silent when faced with a joke. You don't have to be a comedian's favorite target to understand this. Just live in an environment where mocking has become a habit and respect has become an exception. The problem is that this type of behavior does not come isolated. It goes hand in hand with the third destructive pattern, the gaslighting, the manipulation of your perception of reality. Do you know when someone denies having said something, even if you are sure? Or when they accuse you of always making drama? This is gaslighting. And he is even more perverse because he doesn't attack what you do but what you feel. He convinces you that the pain you are feeling is not real, that you are exaggerating, that it's your fault. And the effect of this is devastating. You start to doubt your own memory, from your intuition, of its value. Your mind becomes a battlefield where every emotion is put on trial. And the judge? It's the other one, not you. Jung called this internal betrayal. The moment you disconnect from your own soul, in which you begin to reject your own feelings to adapt to the version of reality that someone else has imposed on you. And once you start this process of internal denial, everything becomes fragile. Your limits, your self-esteem, your identity. Think about a simple situation. A father tells his 16-year-old daughter, "You're so ungrateful. I only want the best for you." This after she questioned his decision. The phrase at first glance seems paternal, but notice what it does. The daughter begins to feel wrong for expressing what she feels. This repeats itself, and she stops questioning. Stop feeling. Years later, she becomes a woman who doesn't know how to say no, who always blames herself, who is always trying to please. This is no coincidence. This is the cumulative effect of gaslighting, and it can come from partners, friends, co-workers, even religious or educational figures. It's an emotional epidemic that slowly erases your identity and ignites a false version of you, molded to please. The big trap is that gaslighting is often done with good intentions, or at least how they look. Those who practice it are not always fully aware, but the damage is still real, and you don't need to prove that you are being manipulated. You just need to believe in your own perception, because it is valid. She is enough, and it is the beginning of your liberation. Carl Jung wrote that the greatest danger to the human soul lies not in overt evil, but in the subtle shadows we tolerate day after day. And these three shadows, emotional manipulation, masked humiliation, and gaslighting, are the most insidious, because they grow in the dark, protected by the normal label. You've seen how they settle in, how they feed off each other, how they turn you into a shadow of yourself. But there is still more, because after you've been manipulated, ridiculed, and made to doubt yourself, comes an even crueler blow. The systematic erasure of how you feel. The annulment of your emotion as something legitimate. It's not that they tell you to shut up with harsh words. It's more treacherous than that. That's when you vent and get an impatient look. When you share a pain and here you go with that again. This is when every attempt to express yourself meets an invisible, cold barrier made of disdain. Little by little, you will learn that feeling too much is a nuisance, that saying what you feel is a mistake, that crying is embarrassing, and without realizing it, you are reducing the volume of yourself. This is a type of repression that is not imposed by force, but infiltrates like water through a crack. It contaminates your relationship with the world, with others, with yourself. Because if what you feel is constantly delegitimized, a part of you starts to believe that maybe you really are wrong. And if it's wrong, it's better not to feel it, better to shut up, better not to bother. But what happens to something essential that is repressed for too long? It doesn't disappear. It deforms. Repressed anger becomes passivity. Denied sadness turns into chronic tiredness. Unwelcome frustration turns into bitterness. Jung said that what we do not face within ourselves inevitably turns against us. And that's exactly what starts to happen. People who live under this type of emotional blanking do not just become psychologically ill. They lose the sparkle in their eyes. They lose spontaneity. They stop laughing like they used to. They begin to avoid deep conversations. They become automated versions of themselves, present in body, but absent in soul. It is at this time that something subtle, but very dangerous, begins to be internalized. The idea that the other always comes first, that living for others is right, that sacrificing oneself for love is the noblest of acts. And then the sixth behavior is born, so dangerous because it is admired, the normalization of sacrifice as a virtue. Have you ever noticed how our culture celebrates silent suffering? How is the figure of the person who does everything for others almost deified? How many times have you heard compliments like, "She works so hard, she never thinks about herself," as if that were an award and not a sentence? The problem is that when sacrifice becomes identity, abandoning oneself becomes routine, and what should be a choice becomes an obligation. You start by giving up a small desire, after a limit, after a space, and when you see it, you no longer know where you start and where others end. You no longer know how to say what you really want, because everything was given away. Everything was donated, and nothing was refunded. You live exhausted and without understanding why. Because those who always live to please end up being strange in their own skin. Think of an example. A 52-year-old woman, school cook, mother of 3 adult children. He dedicated his entire life to his family. Never complained. But he also never dreamed for himself. When she finds herself alone, with her children moving on with their lives, she feels empty. Not from people, but from yourself. Because the life he built never included her at the center. And now that you have time, you don't know what to do with it. Constant sacrifice is not love. It's self-denial. And that is not virtue. It's a slow form of disappearance. Jung said that the center of our emotional balance is the self, the total image of who we are, which includes desires, limits, instincts, intuition. When you move away from this center for too long, you begin to live out of balance. You become what is expected of you, but not what you really are. And do you know the final danger of all this? When you have already erased yourself, sacrificed yourself, swallowed so much, you begin to accept the unacceptable. Because after giving in so much, something inside you believes that you no longer deserve to demand anything. And then, what was previously uncomfortable becomes normal. What used to hurt, now you don't even feel it anymore. Because its limit was exceeded so many times that it ceased to exist. This is where the 7th and final behavior comes in. Accepting contempt as a condition for belonging. And perhaps this is the saddest of all. Because it's the moment you stop fighting. Stop questioning. Stop expecting something better. You simply adapt to the minimum, to the silences, to the absence of affection, to the emotional crumbs. And the cruelest thing, you start to think that this is all you deserve. This resignation is the slow death of the soul. Jung called this psychic death. The person still breathes, still performs tasks, still smiles in photos. But inside, it is fragmented. Because the place where there should be a whole I now exists only a shadow trained to please. Do you know that feeling? Being in a group, in a relationship, in a family, and still feeling like you don't really belong? Like you're always trying hard to be accepted even when it costs you your own peace? This is not love. This is emotional submission. And the root of it all lies in the behaviors you learn to normalize. But none of this is definitive. None of this is irreversible. What is happening now as you listen to these words is a silent and profound movement back into yourself, a reconnection with something you may have lost a long time ago, your own truth. This truth can hurt. It can be annoying. It can disorganize everything you thought was right, but it also frees. She returns his voice. Your presence. Your right to exist fully. And maybe, just maybe, this is the time to decide, to look at everything that was tolerated, justified, silenced, and choose something different, not as a revolt, but in return. Because you weren't born to survive in environments that make you sick. You were born to occupy your space with entirety, with courage, with truth. And everything that keeps you away from that needs to be questioned. It doesn't matter if it comes disguised as love, friendship, tradition. If it turns you off, it doesn't serve you. If he shuts you up, he doesn't love you. If it requires emotional death to stay, it's not worth continuing. And if you feel it pulsing inside you right now, then it's a sign that you're ready for the most difficult step, but also the most transformative. The step that separates those who only rationally understand what is happening from those who truly change the way they place themselves in the world. This step is not external. It doesn't require a scandalous breakup, nor a change of city, nor an announcement to everyone around. It happens internally, in silence, with the strength of those who have decided that they will no longer live by half. This decision is not a cry. It's a firm whisper. He arrives. Enough of enduring the unbearable. No more adapting to contexts that diminish you. No more smiling when what you feel like crying. No more emotional support from people who never offer you a shoulder to lean on. No more negotiating your own peace in exchange for a crumb of acceptance. He arrives. At this point, you begin to reverse the flow. Instead of looking outside for what was always missing, you start looking inside. Start listening to yourself. And for the first time, perhaps in years, you ask yourself, what do I really need? This simple but powerful question has the potential to dismantle everything that has been built on false needs. You realize that much of what you sought, approval, validation, belonging, was actually a desperate attempt to be seen. But now when you see yourself, something changes. Because when you truly see yourself with all your pain, limits, desires, and scars, you no longer need to beg for someone to see you. You are already whole. This is where you begin to rebuild your center, drawing new contours for its presence in the world. And that starts with small acts of courage. Say no without guilt. Stay silent when they want to push explanations on you. Choosing your own company when others drain you. Letting go of someone who only shows up when they need to. Close doors that should never have been opened. These gestures seem small, but they are revolutions. Each of them undoes a piece of what was imposed. And over time, these acts accumulate, like bricks in a solid foundation. The house you are building now has no walls of fear, no roof of convenience. It is made of presence, truth, and choice. Perhaps there are still doubts. After all, the voice of the old standard is insistent. She'll whisper, "What if you're being selfish? What if I lose everything? What if I'm exaggerating?" But now you recognize that voice, and you know she's not yours. She is the echo of what they placed in you. And no matter how loud she screams, there is another voice emerging. More serene, more firm, more yours. And she says, "You deserve to exist fully." You begin to realize that life doesn't have to be about survival. It can be an address. It can be a breathing space. It can be made of relationships that don't require your pain as a bargaining chip. You realize that love, when it is true, does not demand silence. Don't mock your vulnerability. It doesn't require you to be less so that the other person can be more. True love sustains you. It does not consume you. This awareness, however, comes with an inevitable consequence. Loss. Because not everyone will follow this new you. Not everyone will accept that you are no longer useful in the power dynamic they have built with you. People who loved you when you were available will be surprised when you become honest. They will accuse you of having changed, and they will be right. You have changed. You found yourself. And that's okay, because each loss in this process is, in fact, a cleansing, a space that opens up, a release. You are not losing affection. You are freeing yourself from patterns of emotional imprisonment. It's not being alone. You are stepping out of the noise to hear who you really are. The emptiness that comes after liberation is not loneliness. It's fertile soil. And it is in this soil that a new life begins to be born. In this new space, you can finally rest. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed within it. You can breathe more calmly. You can look in the mirror and recognize who is there. You can live without needing to prove yourself all the time. And above all, you can love without losing yourself. You become someone who does not accept less than you deserve, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. Someone who knows that love, real love, will never be built on control, fear, or absence. And that certainty doesn't make you arrogant, it makes you free. This freedom, once achieved, is never lost. It can be threatened, challenged, tested, but now that you know what it's like to live for yourself, you won't settle for less. Returning to the old pattern will always be too uncomfortable, and that is the biggest sign that you have awakened. And if you've come this far, if you followed every word, every deconstruction, every exposed wound, then I tell you clearly, you've already started. Transformation does not begin when everything changes outside. It starts when you decide to no longer accept what hurts you inside. And you have already made that decision. You've already started. And getting started is more than half the battle. Most people never start. They feel it, they feel uncomfortable, they understand, but they go back to sleep. They get distracted. They get lost in the noise of the world. You don't. You had the courage to look within even though you knew it would mean losing the comfort of the known. And that alone puts you at another level of consciousness, a level where it is no longer possible to accept what previously seemed tolerable. From here, everything changes, maybe little by little. Maybe in silence, but it changes. Because you are different. Because now you know how to name what hurts you. You recognize the fake laughter, the conditional affection, the cruel absence, the sacrifice disguised as virtue. You feel the difference between what nourishes and what sucks, between what approaches and what controls, between what welcomes and what silences. And that clarity is a blessing, even if it comes with pain. Because she is the one who will guide you. It will show you who is worth staying with. It will teach you how to take care of yourself like no one ever has. It will help you build bonds based on truth, not need. Because now you understand that no one completes you. You are not half of anything. You are a whole, and this whole thing doesn't need to shrink to fit into anyone's world. Of course, there will be difficult days. You will still hesitate. You will still miss the false peace you experienced before. You'll want to come back, but every time it happens, you take a breath, and he remembers everything he tolerated. Remember what you felt. Remember what it was like to live swallowing what was slowly killing you. And then choose again. Choose continue. Because continuing is what differentiates those who wake up from those who just dream of a better life. And on this path, you are not alone. There are thousands of other people feeling the same pain, going through the same doubts, facing the same shadows. And if this video touched you, it's because there is something in common between us. A sincere desire to live with more truth, more freedom, more awareness. So if this resonates with you, I invite you to be part of something bigger. This channel is not just a platform. It's a meeting point, a space where you can be you, where you don't need to explain yourself, diminish yourself, or pretend. Here, we talk about what no one has the courage to say. We break the silence with courage, one video at a time. And if you want to follow this path, if you want to continue this process of reuniting with who you really are, then subscribe to the channel now. Not because I'm asking, but because you deserve to be in a place that validates your journey. And more than that, leave your story in the comments. What have you already experienced? At what point did you realize something was wrong? What was the phrase that struck you most in this video? What hurt you? What set you free? Share with us, because your words could be the push someone else needs to get started. And together, these stories form a living, real, strong community, a network of people who no longer accept living in the dark. Here, your pain is heard, your doubt is respected, your silence is welcomed, and your courage is celebrated. Because changing is not easy. But when you change surrounded by people who understand your struggle, everything becomes lighter, more possible, more true. And if you've made it this far, to the last line, to the last breath of this message, then there's something in you that's ready, who won't sleep anymore, who will look day after day for a way to live without betraying himself. From now on, you are no longer just a spectator of your own life. You are the author, the protagonist, the center, and everything that comes after that will be built on firm ground. You, all of you. Then take a deep breath, look up, straighten your spine, walk with presence, and remember, the world may even try to shape you, but only you can decide who you will be from now on.